Welcome to Conversation with Haych, and we have another incredible, amazing guest, a wellness coach, a coach at K Go Life, a mentor at a more Destin. Destin?
That's it.
Okay, cool. A mental health blogger, a writer, speaker, creative content, art, wellness gifts, and personal care products. Go follow that at Penny with an E Creations. She has been featured on BBC Ideas, D2R podcast, I Am a Vessel UK, La Art Magazine, Magnify, Collective, and much more. I formally introduce you to some of you guys know as Penny Bell, but this is Penny Jarrett. How are you doing today?
What a lovely introduction. Thank you. I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you. Are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We're getting through this day. But for those who don't know who you are, who is Penny Jarrett?
That is I. I guess the reason I am here now is I guess I'm a survivor without sounding like an absolute slice of cheese. I am someone who has I guess my heart to want to help people has come from all the difficult things that I've experienced, whether it be in my childhood, in my teenhood, adulthood. I'm 34, so all the years before that, I've had different things at different levels that I've just grown passionate about helping other people who go through similar. So yeah, I guess I just want to help heal people. That's it in a nutshell. I'm just trying to share the ways that I have found freedom and peace, and and just hope that it offers the same to others. And that's why I'm a wellness coach and I create those kind of products and why I do everything I do. This is so mad because it's a scripture that I actually stand on. I'm going to look it up so I don't say the numbers wrong, because I did this before. I told someone what my favorite Bible scripture was and I got one number wrong and they were like, why is it that one then? And I was like, how could you not know? But it's basically in Isaiah where it says we're called to set the captives free and help the blind see. Yeah, so that's the kind of scripture that I try to live by, helping people see themselves and life in an uplifting perspective, and also set them free from the things that keep them in bondage.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's younger Penny like?
That's a nice question. What's younger Penny like? She's a tomboy.
Swear.
Yeah, I used to play football well.
And
I used to be a proper tomboy. I really, really looked up to my older brother. He's 3 years older than me. And he was just really good at football. He was, I guess just quite authoritative. And I looked up to it. So I just thought, just be a bit boyish, it's better. So I was a tomboy basically because I looked up to him. So yeah, it just meant that I guess I had a lot of energy when it came to sports and quite mischievous in a way. So lots of energy flung in the wrong direction. I had quite an interest with fires. So I used to just love anytime I'd see anything, if the matches were near. I was terrible when it came to fire. I guess it was just the overstimulation. I was always searching for stimulation, put it that way, and fires. But yeah, I was quite energetic, I guess. Also very caring.
Okay.
I used to hate seeing snails squashed, so I used to collect them and take them home.
Really? Like capture, or like that's...
I had a drawer of snails. And they probably dried up. But I thought I was saving them.
You thought you were saving them, but you're just giving them a longer death.
The worst thing, when I was young, I was just drying them up in a drawer. Like I had like a stationery drawer that I cleared out for them. If you know how much I'm obsessed with stationery, you'll know that was a massive sacrifice for a child.
Wow.
And so I just had it full of snails. It was so hilarious the day my mum found it. But But yeah, and it's because when I used to go out to play and see a snail squashed on the floor, you know, in the rain, and it's like green, like that, I think that used to kind of semi-traumatize me. It was the grossest thing I could ever see.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I just think, how did they feel? So I used to just take them all off the street.
you was a snail youth worker, taking the snails off the streets and
take the snails off the streets and take them off.
Oh, that's hilarious. And the fact that you sacrificed a stationery drawer for the snails as well is, and considering what you do now,
so they could all commune.
That is amazing.
I forgot about that until just now, you know. That is so, yeah, that's funny.
So one of the things that I kind of want to touch on, because I've watched and read a lot of your interviews where you've talked about different things, but were there any major, you know, events in your younger life that kind of had a major effect on you, and how did they shape you as you was growing up?
Yeah, so as we mentioned just before we started recording, I was born in Birmingham, despite my accent misleading you. And so I guess when I was quite young, my mum left my dad and came to London. And that was massive, because it's funny, I don't even remember what I was doing last week, but I remember being really, you know, close to my dad, even though I was only 3 or 4 the last time I lived with him. So that heavily impacted me. And it was kind of like a trigger point all throughout my school years, that like I used to feel uncomfortable seeing people with their dads. Wow. I used to feel jealous. And then when I got, I guess that, you know, people, I don't know how people knew. I must have been speaking about it, but I don't remember. But that it would become like in arguments in school, it would be like a trigger point where people would bring it up and it would cause me to be aggressive. Yeah. So it was like, it definitely impacted me massively. And also just experiencing a lot of domestic violence with my mum and her new partner, that definitely gave me a really negative view on relationships, I guess, which led to me even not identifying my own you know, red flags, so to speak, to call them, makes, you know, lightly, but just not being able to, you know, some of the things that I was witnessing and having to accept that could possibly be normal, which when you're a child, you don't really know the difference. And so, yeah, it kind of made it hard for me to kind of raise the bar when it comes to what I expect in my own relationships, I guess. I guess a vital thing as well would have been losing my mum when I was 15 to drugs. That was really difficult because I obviously knew that she was struggling. I had gone into temporary foster care just whilst she kind of got on her feet, because we went through a difficult time and we got evicted from our home. And then I was separated from her temporarily, which I was 100% sure it was going to be temporary, but that's when I lost her, me and my brothers. So that was definitely like denial. That's when I got to understand what denial was and just complete avoidance. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that happened that that probably introduced caused a lot of suffering, caused a lot of doubt, a lot of hopelessness, and also just not understanding that the world can be good, that there is goodness. When you're young and you experience a lot of fear and a lot of things that cause you to kind of seek, you know, you're always in a state of wanting to find safety, then I guess it takes a lot. It takes a lot of, you know, inner strength, takes a lot of, you know, even intervention. If I didn't give my life to Christ when I was 16, I don't know what I would be like. I was at the end of a very young tether. You'd have thought I was 38 the way I was feeling. Why? And I was 16. And so stuff like that, it's So yeah, I think those are the major things that I've had to go back and sort out after I stopped avoiding it and blocking it out, you know.
So what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
You don't need to be liked and loved by everyone. You don't, like, and I saw a like a, not a meme, like a graphic,
Yeah.
like a graphic on Instagram the other day, and it said, be brave enough to be disliked. And I was like, whoa, what courage to be, you know. I was very scared of rejection, and I still go through times now where I realize I still need to work on it a bit. But like having a uncanny fear of rejection, a need for acceptance, and just wanting to be part of, you know, we all want to be part of a family and we all want to be accepted and loved. But there's the absolute courage of that is attached to being okay if you're not. And I just don't think I was ever okay with the thought of not being loved and accepted. So I was so scared of like what people thought, what people, I used to even have like full blown dialogues in my mind of what other people were saying about me.
Wow.
And I didn't even contemplate that they might not be true. I didn't eat, you know, and this is like just thinking, oh, I bet that person thinks this, and I bet she's told her this, and I bet, and it's overthinking, it's intrusive thoughts, but also it's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy. And it took until I was in my 20s for me to realize that, you know, all of that stuff was probably not even true. And I didn't even contemplate that all of these lies and these fears that I'd created around just wanting to be accepted and people, you know, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't, you know, you think of what your favorite food is. Mine's peanut butter. Not everyone likes peanut butter. Some people are allergic.
Yeah, it's true. Like, it's true. It's so true.
You know, and I think the reason I would give that advice to my younger self, and in any way I'd try to drum it into her in so many different ways, is because there are things that I would have done, and this is just a small one. So like there's loads of things I would have done if I didn't overthink what other people would think about my decision.
Yeah.
But even this, and this is small, but it's from school. So like trampolining. I felt like I went through lots of image issues, completely paranoid and obsessed with being like thinking I was fat and being, you know, I suffered with eating disorders as well. So this mentality was creeping up on me through secondary school. And so I didn't go, when we had trampolining as a PE exercise, I know I would have loved that. I would have loved trampolining. Do you think I would have let anyone see me jump up and down? Just because of the fear of what I look like in front of people that, what? And do you know how much I love a trampoline now?
Listen, do you know how much fun trampolining was back then as well?
Do you know? I would have probably done about 6 flips. I know what I'm like. I would have done stuff. I would have probably, you never know, I could have been doing gymnastics.
Yeah, you would have been about this trampoline life. Yeah, you would have been about this trampoline life.
I would have been doing stuff. Yeah. And it's just something like watching people in awe, enjoying the trampoline. And I was like, the only reason I didn't go on is because I was scared of what I would look like to others. And yeah, I get it. And I'm not like this in my younger self, like you wasted our time.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, I wish she just enjoyed her experiences without caring about what others thought. Yeah.
So you talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of, you know, finding God at 16. Was that because of, you know, your mum passing and then you kind of started to believe in God, or was there more that happened to get you to that point?
I believed, I guess. I was and my auntie had whenever I stayed at one of my auntie's houses, she was a born again Christian, and she was always used to pray with us at night, and so I believed. I had in mind that God was real. It's just a normal thing. You know, I didn't pray. I didn't do much with that knowledge, but I knew. And then I guess when I was quite young, so maybe from the age of, say, 7, there was a lady that had came, one of my mum's friends came with her daughter one day and said, oh, you know, we've started going to a church in your area. And her daughter was a friend. So she was like, I'll take Penny every week. And so from the age of like, what, you know, when I think about this now, what a blessing. But from the age of 7 or 8, I would go with this lady. And even when she stopped going, I would still go, because I was probably like 10 by now, and I could go out on my own. And them days you could go out at 10 on your own. And the church was like just across the road from our house. And so I was like heavily involved and taking part in this little Christian center, basically. Yeah. And so as I was growing up, the lady who led the Sunday school became like, you know, really important to me. And then when my mum passed and when I moved out of the area, she got in touch and she actually invited me to a Christian camp experience when I was 15. So just after my mum had passed. And so going to the church the whole time, I knew God was real. And I knew, you know, there was a song and it was like, I knew that if I was scared, I could sing this song and God would be there. You know, like there was this song, if I am scared, 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 if I am scared, God is there. You know,
them
like
rhythms, them rhythms there. Yeah.
Them rhythms, yeah. And I just with it. So I knew, you know, that there were these little nursery rhymes from Sunday school that I was completely sure of, but I didn't like have a relationship with God. Yeah. And then it was at that, I was 15, I went on this week-long retreat. It was at Ashburnham, actually, which has become it's a place where lots of different Christian organizations have events. Yeah. It's become one of my favorite places now because I've been back. But yeah, I went there, and because I was in like the early stages of being in foster care, and it was like quite strict, which saved me as well. But I just saw it as, a week away. Yeah. I'll bring one of my friends. We'll smoke in the woods.
Vibes.
Yeah. We'll take this opportunity to have a holiday, you know. And cut a long story short, while I was there, I was given loads of leaflets. I had a lovely time, and it was just the most lovely, well-needed experience. And loads of flyers and leaflets were going around. And about, you know, after that, there was a time when I was on the bus and I remember I was on the 18 bus. I was feeling so low and hopeless. I was like smoking and you know, the rest of it, just not in a good place. And I sat on a bus and I was just like, you know, God, if you are real like that, like all those people at that retreat were talking like you were like real, then I need you, and I need to know that, because I can feel that, you know, things aren't I'm not feeling good. I'm not understanding why my mum's not here, and I feel better when I'm smoking. This can't be life. So out of nowhere, I went into my bag. I don't know if I was getting my phone. Did I have one mobile phone? Did mobile phones exist then? Is what I want to know.
Nah, yeah. Use good. Use good. Yeah.
I had a Nokia with an aerial.
Oh, you know, them old school ones that you had snake.
You changed the face. Fancy. Yeah. So I might have just been going in there or I might have been getting my CD man. Yeah. For anyone that's not from that era, you put CDs in it and you carry it around. You just close it and no, Discman, not CD man. CD man.
That's a new thing. That's a new one.
CD man. But I must have just been going in my bag to like change this song or something, and I found a flyer.
Wow.
In there, and it was called, what at the front said, Why Jesus? It was by Nicky Gumbel.
Yeah.
And I read it, and there was a prayer at the back, and I am not exaggerating. I read the prayer and I felt instantly, so the Lord knows it had to happen like this for me, trust me. But I read the prayer. It was a prayer of salvation. It was just inviting the Lord into my life. Just take over from now. Like I admit that the reins should not be in my hands. And I read that prayer and I meant it. And it was just after being like, if you're real, I need to know. And I literally felt in my belly, and I've never felt this before. I understood what the term "I've got butterflies" meant, because all I could feel inside my whole body, like from there to belly button, was like butterflies. And it was like the butterflies were full of love, and they were just flapping around in me, and I was just filled with love for the first time in such a long time, and I felt it. It was so real and tangible. And I got off that bus, and I was far from where I live. I just had an urge to get off the bus. It was like I was just, and I skipped all the way home, which must have been about a 40-minute skip. Who skips? Jog? Yeah. Who skips? I skipped all the way home. I'd never done, knowing that I don't even jump on a trampoline, skipping through a ghetto, basically. And I was singing all of these songs that I'd heard in church in the younger years. And it wasn't nursery rhymes. It was what they used to sing in it was all like Matt Redman songs and Tim Hughes and like these.
All them worship
and
songs.
I never even remembered that I didn't even know I knew these songs. It was just skipping and worshiping, and that was it.
Wow.
And I was like, I couldn't have just gone by faith. I needed to feel that. I was feeling loveless, and that's what I got filled with that day. And yeah, the rest, what's that, 16? So wow, that's like 18 years ago.
Wow.
And
you know what's kind of amazing about that story is that some of the things that you didn't even consciously take in, those songs you didn't consciously take in, but as soon as it got to that moment where you said, I needed God, them songs just started to come back. You said you skipped home 40 minutes. That's mad. To skip
like
in the ends, skipping home.
Yeah.
People are wondering what's going on over there. So the fact that you skipped home and you was just like, that is crazy. Yeah. Wow.
It was out of this world. And it was then that I knew that, that he's real. He's real. It's not just a fancy idea to keep us going. He's real, and he loves us. And yeah, I basically, every single friend that I had at that point are now also Christian. You can imagine what I was going on with. Hey guys, guess what?
Yo, you know about Jesus though? Jesus.
You see those Greek myths we heard in Sunday school? They're real.
I can imagine you convincing them, like, listen, guys, listen.
Because I used to see all, like, when you're hearing stories of like Moses and Abraham, it's similar to I used to just feel like it was similar to the Greek myths I used to hear in school.
Yeah.
And then when you realize, you're like, well, this is a whole world that do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And obviously they would have seen a transformation in you as well. In terms of you've now changed, and it's like, hold on, what's Penny going in with right now? What happened to Penny? What's going on?
Wow, she's got joy.
You get exactly. And with this next question, I don't want to feel like I'm skipping 15 years of your life. But you go from Penny, age 7, going to church, meeting this woman, joyous, and obviously then your mother passing away, that affecting you growing up, you and your family as well. And then you kind of, shortly after that, you go into the youth camp for a week, then hitting 16, kind of being on the bus, getting off the bus. Well, having that kind of that moment with God, getting off the bus, skipping for 40 minutes all the way home. Fast forward and tell me if there's a key point so I don't fast forward to 30. But fast forward to 30, you go and find out that you have ADHD. What's that like?
Oh, mate, we battle not flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, I tell you. The battle was on, basically. I was just caught up in between 16 and all that time. It was mad because I was also a year into, so the first serious relationship that I ever had, it was somebody that I'd met when I was 15. So just before my mum passed. And I obviously, you know, I'd say I had my first encounter with the, you know, the power of the Holy Spirit at 16? What, like, the magnitude of that gift and that intervention, because it was at 16, so at 15 again, sorry, and then at 16, the relationship that I was in, and it was just very young, you know, you're 15, there's not, how intense can a relationship be? But at 16 is when the person that I was with started being abusive, physically, violently, and emotionally, and so I was in, up until the age of 21, I was in a very, very severe, I don't know what so the terminology, I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but I was in a very abusive relationship. Yeah. I often thought that he would take my life. There was lots of really, serious reasons why I would, including, you know, knife violence and stuff like this. So a lot of my journey with the Lord was escapism. Wow. Because I was just constantly trying to adjust to life with a new family who became, you know, I was in foster care. It was permanent now. You know, even calling it foster care seems offensive now because it's my family now. I was very blessed by them and the fact that I had them, but I just was so insecure. I thought that at any point I could get kicked out. And, you know, so I was trying so hard to just be accepted, but also I was being abused very, very severely. And so my relationship with the Lord was just like a blanket. It was very, I was in church as much as possible, but then I wonder at times if that was it was a gift and it was needed, but I wonder if I wasn't being abused in the way that I was, if I would have been so, you know,
so the Lord in the church. Wow.
Yeah, if I would have been so into it, because the reason I say that is because when I came out of a relationship, and it was, I didn't even come out. It was, they got arrested for something completely unrelated to our relationship, but they went to prison. And then I didn't know I was a victim of domestic violence. I didn't know that I was being abused. I knew he was a wrong one,
yeah.
But I didn't know that I didn't. You
didn't know what you were experiencing at the time.
Yeah, I was a child, you know, I was a child basically, and my family, you know, started off as my foster family, were very protective and were very against the relationship. And in the beginning, I was just like, they don't understand him. He's just, you know, he's got, and I got it. They saw, and so I had to lie about it a lot, and yeah, so basically because that was like age 15 to 21. And the intensity of the fact that I hadn't grieved my mum, I hadn't accepted that she was gone, and I had spent the last few years blocking her out so I could just be on point and not get myself into, you know, just hoping that my, you know, relationship didn't end in the worst way. So just always on guard because of that. After that, I just went, when that relationship was gone, I struggled with then substance misuse again. Drinking though, when I was younger, I was just smoking, I wasn't drinking. Then I started being introduced to drink, and it wasn't in communion. It was at the hand there. It wasn't in communion. and that became very, very negative. Wow. And then you know, this whole party lifestyle, and it sounds like, you know, everyone loves a party, but it was just overtaking me. It was a complete distraction. I was trying to be accepted, trying to make up for the years lost where all my friends had fun and I didn't. Wow. And also juggling. So I was living like a double life, because then also I was like a cell leader at church as well, and leading a group, and so the conflict, it was absolutely wild. And I felt like just a raging hypocrite all the time, because I just didn't feel as comfortable sober as I did unsober. So what I realized, so when I turned 30, and before 30, sorry, I'd had enough. I'd had enough of trying to block out all of the odd sides to me, which I now know were probably a result of the trauma, you know, that I'd experienced and never dealt with. And I was just so exhausted with wasting my energy, people please, trying to live a double life, you know, drinking, smoking. And I was just completely fed up. I was ready to just lay it all down finally. And just the guilt of just not serving in a way that I knew I'm called to and meant to. So I started to do that. I started to clear my life up, and I started to seek God deeper, and, you know, and then I just found that things weren't the same. So when you know, I couldn't just sit down and read my Bible like I did when I was 19, or when I was like, I couldn't even sit down. Like, I was just so restless and so edgy, and I wouldn't take anything in, and I just didn't feel like myself. And it took a couple of people mentioning, oh, you're so ADHD. And I was like, is this because I'm being hyper? Because you haven't seen anything yet, honey. This is low energy. Like, I just thought they were referring to me having, like, speaking fast or being a bit hyperactive. So completely ignored that. And then, I had a couple of incidences where I'd said to my friend, I said to her, I've never felt like this, but despite everything like negative that's happened around me, to me, I've never felt hopeless. But at the moment, I'm feeling like I don't get the point of this whole world.
Wow.
Like, I just don't know if it was like, I just don't understand what the Lord's idea was. Like, I forgot. Like, and so I was feeling like this, and my friend's like, what do you mean? I said, I just don't feel anything. Where all these bad things were happening to me, and I felt hope, like, you know what, I'm going to help other women that go through this stuff. The Lord's going to, Romans 8:28, the Lord's going to turn all this around for the good because I love him. Yeah, that was just gone. I was like, meh, nothing. And so I was like, I just don't get I don't get it. I don't. And I said to my friend, like, I don't feel suicidal, but I get it now. I understand why people do. And then she was like, whoa, you were saying stuff like this last month, and could it be related to your time of the month? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never been different during my time of the month. Lo and behold, the pattern came up again the following month. So I was like, I've got a hormone problem. That's what it is.
That's what you thought.
I've got a hormone problem that's making me sound depressed. I get it. I didn't, and the word wasn't depressed because I didn't know what depression was. It was just, that's making me feel hopeless. And so I went to see a hormone specialist, and someone that, you know, because I had a feeling I could just change what I ate. Because I worked with a personal trainer before who used to work with a lot of women that had hormone problems, and they would just change their food. So I was like, oh, I've got a hormone problem. I'll go and see a hormone specialist and see what food I've got to change. And they were just like, you have ADHD. And I was like, what? Excuse me? I've just sat here. I don't get what you mean. And so that was when the other times of people bringing it up came back. My memory. I started to understand why people had said it, and it wasn't about hyperactivity. It was about the only feeling stimulated if I'm concentrating on 3 or 4 things at once. And so my friends would be at my house and see that I was cleaning one room, cooking one thing, and just darting around the house between each thing just to remain stimulated. So someone who knew what ADHD was saw that, but didn't explain why. So that's how it came about during a life cleanup.
You know what? You know what's like mind-boggling to me as well is that all the times where you needed hope throughout your life, God was such like everything felt like I can lean on God, I can go to God, I can go to God, I can go to God. But in the times where you felt like, okay, I'm going to give this all to God now, was like when everything that you'd kind of, not everything, but that thing that you kind of covered wasn't enough?
So even you just saying that, it's a good way to articulate it is, you know, healing, when you say, you can picture that I'm going to just submit to God fully. My life, you know, and I done it. Yeah, Lord, my life is yours. Use me. Just heal me, free me, use me. So that I can
you there. Yeah.
And that's where I was. But then it was like, oh, and now this, now that. But that was day one of the process, the refining process to be used. Not that you can't get used in a process, not that he can't use you during all of that bit, but there is a level of spiritual maturity and development that we all want to get to, that where we are, you know, careful with our words, careful with our thoughts, loving our neighbor as ourselves, and doing things that help us to uplift everything and everyone around us. And we want to get there. But on the route to getting there, you got to get rid of all your attitude problems, all your toxic behaviors, all of the, you know, limiting beliefs, all of the physical habits that are not edifying. He'll still use you in all of that. And it can feel like it's absolutely like, oh, yeah, but I just submitted the other day. Why now? And it's because it's in that prayer of submission that you said, I'm ready. And so that's when the refining process starts. And they say, you know, with diamonds, they need fire. So yeah, you'll go through the fire, but you won't get burnt. That's what Daniel said.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it is. I noticed, I'm realizing that when you said it as well, actually, it's an answer to prayer, but it feels so painful, especially when you feel like all of the stuff that you're experiencing, which is difficult, is you know, when I submit to the Lord and, you know, all of this, I'll be healed. One touch from the King changes everything. And I used to stand on that song, just one touch from the King. And I used to be like, yeah, when I submit, when I'm good enough, he'll touch me and I will be healed. And I won't be, you know, needing alcohol or needing to be a people pleaser to feel valuable. Because I would have submitted, I would be a good girl, and I would be healed. And then you get told you've got a brain disorder, which is incurable, and actually you're not getting healed, hun. And you're like, wow. Oh, okay. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it rocks you and your faith.
Do you know what? As I'm listening to you talk as well, it's so true what you're saying in terms of, as soon as we're like, yeah, God, I'm here, I'm ready to serve you, there's always something where, okay, let's peel back that. Let's peel back this, let's peel back that. But sometimes we feel like, God, me giving you everything is, I'm ready. I've done all I need to do. Just come, look at me, I'm ready. And I can only imagine what was going through your thought process at the time where you're like, okay, I've seen the world this way for 30 years of my life. And now I'm seeing the world a totally different way. Did it kind of give you more answers to how you would like to certain things that happened previously, like before you knew that you had ADHD? Did it give you more answers or was it more questions?
I felt so there were parts of my personality, I guess, that I'm not even, so the reason why I'm struggling to answer this is because so this incurable brain disorder, which is what ADHD is described as in like a lot of medical reports, is it looks like a lot of other things. So as you know, with the effects of trauma, which is CPTSD, and me realizing that was also something that I was struggling with, and the symptoms were identical, but also the choices that I'd made, the self-sabotaging behavior that I'd developed because of overwhelm, because of lack of self-belief, because of low confidence, and because of a fear of failure. So all of the self-sabotaging behaviors that I'd picked up because of that could look like ADHD too. So the reason I'm saying that is because whilst hearing that I had ADHD at the time was really liberating, I wonder now if it was actually liberating or it just felt good to blame something on the things that I was you know. And I'm not saying that it's people, you know, because a lot of people who have ADHD and go through ADHD have a horrible stigma attached to, people that have ADHD are just blaming ADHD for everything. Like, no, I see why I got diagnosed with ADHD. Like I see, I have, like, if there's 100 symptoms, because there's around 100, I've probably got 98. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also the reason I think it was so liberating for me is because I felt understood. I felt like all of these odd behaviors that I can't really articulate. I don't know I didn't know anything about mental health until I was 30. I didn't know that procrastination was a thing. I didn't know that self-sabotage was a thing. These are all psychological problems that can lead to mental health issues. I didn't know depression was a thing. I didn't know anxiety was a thing. I thought I was told by someone before that I'm addicted to fear. You know, when I was really young, well, not really young, but early 20s, the first time I tried therapy, I was told by the lady that I'm addicted to fear and worry. She didn't mention anxiety or anything like that. So I was like, okay, I find things to worry about sometimes when there's nothing. So I must have just been so used to being worried that when worry's not there, I'm searching for it just to feel normal. Wow. So that made sense. I didn't know anything about, like, mental health labels. So finding out that a lot of the things that I was struggling with, from, you know, procrastinating to forgetfulness, fogginess, inability to concentrate, hyperactivity, oversharing, social anxiety, rejection sensitive, emotional dysregulation, all of these things that I saw as flaws within myself that I'd have to pick out one by one to heal and to grow my confidence in, which can feel like a lifetime task. It felt quite good to know that they all just fall under one thing. So if I learn to manage that one thing, I'll be free.
Yeah.
And whilst I was told at first, which felt quite debilitating, is that it's incurable, I was there. That got me for a while. But then I started to look it up, and I started to realize this isn't incurable. It feels impossible to look at every single symptom that I'm talking about and other ones that I haven't even talked about and think, you know, who can manage all of these at once and be cured? Because especially when it's a parent going in talking about a child, because that's what ADHD is more common in.
Yeah.
And so yes, it's incurable. We can't cure it, but we can manage it. And I beg to differ, because I know that all of the symptoms that I personally struggle with, and other people I know, whilst medication can help and can be a support, you can reverse them all. And then you might still be neurodiverse, which is a word used for not having a typical brain. Which brain is the same? The terms is just, you know, it's so much. And so whilst I was like owning this label, my ADHD brain, and I am very grateful for having the opportunity to understand myself through my diagnosis. It's not going to be mine forever. I do know that. And as I'm working on all the symptoms I struggle with the most and finding ways to combat them, I won't be describing ADHD as mine anymore. And I'm sure of that. So I did get a lot of freedom in, you know, liberation. But then I do also feel like that was partly because the blame came off of me. And it's like I stopped blaming myself for my shortcomings and I blamed my brain, you know? And so, yeah, it was at first, it was like, wait, all of this stuff that I thought I was going to heal from, I'm not going to heal from. What from? So by submitting to the Lord and praying more and you know, using the word as a weapon, I'm not actually going to be free from this stuff. I'm stuck with it. So that hit me. But then I figured out, no, I will help. That's what I'll do. And I will share what I learn on my journey. And so, yeah, I forgot your question, but I know I've answered it.
No, you definitely answered. The thing, you know what's amazing as well? You answered that question and a couple other questions I had on top of that. So now I'm just like, okay, let's move through the list. Let's move through the list. But one of the amazing things, especially when I've been following your journey for years. And it was only kind of the last 2 years where I kind of saw you put in a light where, you know, you do more conversations, more speaking more about, you know, suffering ADHD and stuff like that. And for me, it was eye-opening because especially where I've come from, mental health in general, especially when I was younger, wasn't really spoken about like that. So it wasn't a thing. It was just something's wrong with that person, or there's something not too right with that person, and that was it. But now, as we're kind of moving into being in the 21st century and kind of, especially kind of the last 5 years, mental health has definitely become something that is more spoken about, especially with kind of social media and those types of things. So when you speak about ADHD, it opens my eyes to understanding something that was very limited to me in terms of being spoken about in earlier life, in growing up, in seeing people who I knew had ADHD, but not understanding, okay, they've got ADHD. I don't understand what exactly what it is, but I just know that there's certain things that we do slightly differently. And there's certain things that, like you spoke about, I think it was on the BBC Ideas a couple of years ago, where you were talking about hyperfocus, and me noticing that certain people just have an ability to just focus in on this thing. And I'm like, trying to talk to this person or do X, Y, and Z. You're just like, yo, listen, yo, what's going on? You cool. You're all right. It's been 5 hours. You've been drawing this picture for 5 hours. I don't know how you've done this. But it's those types of things but I didn't fully understand. It was literally, as you said, just a label without understanding the context and the construct of what it is. And I think that's amazing that how you speak about it just here as well, but in general, even just today, I've seen you on a few Instagram lives and stuff like that, speaking about it. And it's an eye opener to people. And I think it's amazing what you do. So if you ever feel like it might feel like it's getting too much in terms of speaking about it, I have to just reiterate that you are opening so many people's eyes to some things that they've heard and seen the label, but not understand the context beneath it. And what you do great is give context and construct to what is actually underneath it.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is amazing to me.
Really encouraging to hear. Thank you.
But then a year later, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
I know, mayhem, AKA.
And especially because it has similar kind of, as you spoke about already, it has similar attributes to ADHD. What are you thinking at that point when that happens? And does that explain some stuff as well?
So I'd been managing, it's funny because I haven't even written an actual blog post about ADHD since. So I've been speaking about it more, but I went through a few difficult situations. There was, and I'm sorry if this is triggering to anyone, I'm going to mention suicide. So I just thought I'd say that if anyone's listening and doesn't want to hear it. But I went through a few traumatic experiences where all in a bit of a bundle. So I didn't, the Grenfell Tower fire, I think I mentioned this on a bit earlier, but the Grenfell Tower fire was at the bottom of my road, and there was a couple of people in there that I knew, and so that and the area's just rocked because of it. Obviously, you come out of your house and there's so that had happened, and these were the three main things in this little period of time that I noticed had I felt like I was strong about, and I was dealing with okay and trying to be a support to other people, but I clearly, something was happening. And it was a friend of mine having an accident, and also a colleague at work came over to me and was like, oh yeah, I heard that you write about mental health now, why? So I was like, yeah, because we used to sit together, but we don't anymore. And the office is so big that if you don't sit with someone, sometimes, you could not see them again.
Yeah.
And so he had asked me why I was writing about mental health. I explained to him that since we last knew each other, I had been diagnosed and understood more about mental health. So I'm just sharing my journey, and I'm trying to help other people to feel comfortable speaking about it and seeking help and stuff. And he was like, can me and you speak? And I was like, oh, and he goes, yeah, like someone else told me to come to you. So I gathered he was struggling. It was obvious. So, and I was like, of course. And so so as we were, I was about to send him some links. He said to me, can you send me links to your blog? And then I will call you if that's okay. And we talk. So I was about to send him the links, and we worked in sales, and it was a sales floor, and a manager was walking past, and we're from different teams. So he was like, we both scarpered. It was like billing day, last day of the month. You got your last day to get your sales in. You are not from this team. What are you doing over here? It would be,
There's no time for chit chat. Come on, guys.
No, not two different teams anyway. And you're obviously, he was from a total different. So anyway, cut a long story short, he went back to his seat or something, and I forgot, and he killed himself that day. And so I just stopped writing. I stopped talking about mental health. I felt like such a hypocrite. I was like, I'm doing everything I can to help people online, and I'm not helping people that come up to me in the flesh. I felt so like beat. It was just the kind of the last straw for everything else I'd tried to be strong about. And I went into, I guess, a season of depression. I couldn't manage my ADHD anymore. Everything that I'd learned on how to manage it without medication, it was just like, but go away. I was back drinking in the evenings, to as soon as I got in from work, just to close my mind off from everything I was feeling, which are patterns that I had left, and and I clocked that I can't manage my ADHD anymore. It's gone through the roof. And then what I found out is I got myself therapy, and I found out that I had CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And that made so much sense because of all of the things that I'd been through as a child, the stuff I'd witnessed on my mum's journey and then my own. And so if you think about the fact that I, even before I got diagnosed with ADHD, I knew I had a lot of stuff I needed to get over. I knew that I needed healing, so I submitted my life afresh to the Lord, just like, please, Lord, forgive me, take me back, not that I'd stopped going to church, but I was living a double life. And so it was funny that as I was seeking healing for past trauma, I stumbled upon ADHD, which was nothing to do with trauma, but explained a lot of my behavior. But then it was like, it almost feels like I needed to get an understanding about, because I needed to help people with that, and myself, of course. But I just feel like you have to see the big picture, and I needed to help people with seeing it and identifying it. But then to find out that the thing that made a lot more sense to me in regards to I need healing is the effects of trauma, which is CPTSD. It's an anxiety disorder that a person who has either lived in a traumatic environment or experienced several traumatic events at one after another without getting support, or been abused over a long period of time, or some, you get. And so that, it's almost like the symptoms were very similar, and that's healable. It's healable. So I decided I weren't writing about ADHD anymore anyway, because I just felt like I couldn't write about mental health and try to help people when I was feeling like a hypocrite and, feeling really heavy. But then I started to focus on, I need to get rid of if I've got two disorders with the same symptoms, basically one's healable and one's incurable, then I need to focus on the one that I can heal, because then, this could be the answer to prayer that I needed to find, maybe it's not going to be one touch from the King changes everything for me, even though I know that can happen, and I believe fully in the power of healing. I also know that I have a task and a mission, and it might involve me having to do some groundwork. And so I had to practically find ways to access this freedom myself, I believe. And so so that the transition, that's why, and doing that, and I'm actually doing a TED talk in June, and I am doing it on this subject, because I'm going to throw you off a tiny bit right now, right? But you're getting a glimpse into the TED talk. So you're getting a glimpse. So whilst one is incurable and requires medication, and I don't know how you feel about like pharmaceutical world, but I get what you're saying. We're often told to take medication rather than you know, and not all the time,
Yeah.
because there are some amazing doctors out there that do show you how to change your life rather than how to rely on meds. But we are often told to take that and that will help that. And we become reliant on it, and we don't ever experience true freedom, because at some point the meds stop working, we become immune. And, you know, we always have to get a stronger dose, or we then have the side effects from the meds, which some of them are like wild.
Yeah.
You know, you could take a medication, this will help you focus, but it will cause internal bleeding. It's like, what? So, you know, I'm giving an example of why I was so this one's incurable and requires medication, and then there's CPTSD, which has very similar symptoms, understandable as well, rather than just I've got a brain disorder which makes me unable to, you know, all these things, to I've been through loads of really difficult, painful situations which have caused me to, you know. So this one was kind of like, I can attack this, whilst, you know, also learning to manage ADHD is doable too, but, you know, this felt more. And then on my journey to doing this and to learning about how I do heal from some of these internal wounds, these emotional wounds, about, you know, the grieving, you know, the understand, you know, when a child leaves a parent and never ever spends the time working on it, it's gonna show up. You have to dig these things up and deal with them. But what I also found out is that there are a few things that also have very similar symptoms to ADHD and CPTSD. So the inability to concentrate, foggy mind, forgetfulness, procrastination, low motivation, depression, anxiety. And guess what they are? You're not going to guess it, so I'm going to tell you. So one is, if you are now not allergic, but intolerant, if you are have an intolerance for yeast or caffeine, you could also be misdiagnosed with ADHD, because the symptoms are the same. And if you haven't had a blood test or a full physical to know that you have these intolerances, who would know? Listen, if you identified with everything that I talk about when I talk about ADHD, and you go to a doctor and a mental ADHD or autism specialist, because that's the best person to speak to, and they could diagnose you with ADHD when they hear what you explain. But also you could also be just addicted to bread and coffee and you're intolerant to them, because the symptoms are the same. That's one. Also, these symptoms show up in people that, okay, so the long-term effects of mercury poisoning are also inability to concentrate, foggy mind, intrusive thoughts, nightmares. Okay, and guess what mercury is in? This filling. So the effects of your blood being slowly poisoned by mercury also looks like ADHD. And if you have any silver fillings in your mouth, you are being slowly poisoned by mercury. And so I love a coffee. I love a bread. There are times in the month when I love a bread even more. I also have a silver tooth, which I'm getting taken out.
Why?
And so this is what I'm doing my TED Talk on.
Why?
Yeah. You get me?
Yo.
So this is why health is wealth. They say knowledge is more valuable than gold. Because if you do have any silver fillings and you do experience, or there, it's not a maybe, look up online, what does mercury poisoning look like? If you're eating lots of fish with mercury, or you have mercury inside your mouth leaking into your blood every day, what does it look like? I'd love to know. You Google that and the information's all there. It looks a mess, and it's a mental mess. And we could very well be a nation of adults who are all having severe problems at a certain point, because that's when the blood started to get so, that's when it started to manifest. It's like, I was saying again earlier, and you can smoke cigarettes every single day of your life, but you might not get lung cancer until you're 55. You don't smoke a cigarette and your lungs pop down. So everyone thinks it's fine to just smoke every day. It's not. It happens over time. The effects are physical. you know? And it's the same with some of these things that we don't even know are harmful. Like if you have an intolerance to certain things and you continue to ingest them because you're not throwing up, you're not getting hives, you're not having allergic reactions in your mouth, you don't know you're intolerant. What happens after a while? You become poisoned. Your body becomes poisoned, and your blood becomes poisoned, and it affects your tool.
Penny, you blow my mind right now. You blow my mind.
So the reason I'm doing my TED talk on this is because, and I don't know if you can even pick up on it, but I'm so skeptical about how to give advice at the moment because I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
And whilst I am so, hashtag ADHD gang, because I want to free all my ADHDers from all their symptoms, I also don't want them to own the label anymore when I know that they're reversible. And whilst there is a whole movement of, people don't understand us, people think that ADHD isn't real, and people, think that we're just lazy, and no one deserves to be treated like that. And I, of all people, understand that stigma, but I also know that there are other things that can contribute and magnify the symptoms because they all have the same symptoms. They say that ADHD is a brain disorder. There are things that we're doing that cause brain damage, including hiding our trauma and deciding not to deal with it, and including ingesting things that our body doesn't want.
Can't break down, can't do certain things with it. I hear you.
And there are probably loads of other physical ailments that come with mercury poisoning, and why do you think it's on the and I'm not dissing any organization, but why do you think it costs so much more to get a white filling? It's not just because when you laugh you see a black thing. It's like your mouth's full of all these, it's because it's less poison. It's expensive because it's better for you. People say, no, I got my fillings out because every time I was laughing or shouting, my mouth just looks like I've got black teeth. No, it's because it's cheaper to do that, but there's a risk. And the risk is, after a certain amount of years, your mind's all over the place, hun.
Penny.
Yeah. So wow. I had to just drop it, because anyone that's resonating, first things first, stop putting a lid on the trauma, stop putting a lid on your emotions, deal with them, face them, process them, let go, shut the door, forgive people, deal, cry, heal. Yes, submit first. But also, your food affects your mood. Check what's going in, because, and then look at, after practicing these things, then if there are other things that you think your answers lie under, then go that route. But them two are free. It's free to do. It doesn't mean you have to take in any other chemical to address, and or own a label and be put in a category. I'm not saying that sometimes it's not helpful, but this is what I'm learning, and this is my truth right now. So I just thought I don't want everyone who resonates to just go straight away and get diagnosed with ADHD or depression or anything. You want
them to look into these things that everything. They can do, and just you want them to do the research, make sure you get the background knowledge behind all these different things, and do the things that you've said, your food affects your mood, and obviously stop holding on to the trauma and not dealing with it, essentially, which is three things, as you said. I got my last two questions. Carry on, speak.
Yeah, sorry. Just to, and it could be as simple as a lot of people do say that healing's a journey and stuff like that. And sometimes when you've had childhood trauma that you don't really remember, or you don't know if it's affected you badly, it's just talking to someone and sometimes just getting it out, or writing about it, journaling, and just getting it out and identifying that, it's not your identity anymore. Whatever you'd gone through, the world is a good place. There is, we've got the mix. There's good, there's bad, but you don't have to be on guard. You don't have to be blocking out love. You don't have to be running away from good things in fear of losing them. And these are all things I went through, just the inability to embrace goodness in fear that it will get taken away. I was living in a state of fight or flight all the time. And so even just affirming, speaking life over yourself, praying more often, journaling, and you know, you can speak to someone, therapy, whatever, but you can spend time in prayer and speak life over yourself. It could just be that. You don't even know what could happen in one night of an hour of, you know, some self-affirmation and some identifying, you know what the truth is, that happened to me. It wasn't fair. I didn't need to, you know, it's affecting my relationships now. It's affecting my attitude now. I choose to be free. It could be just that, boom, you know, but sometimes it's a process. Or you could just say, Lord, one touch from the King heals everything, help me. Good. Everyone's different. True. Mine was definitely a little bit more strenuous of a route.
The last two questions I want to ask you is, I want to kind of talk about Penny Bell Creations and why you started doing that, like the wellness gifts and, you know, the self-care kind of products. Why did you start doing that, and how has that helped you?
Oh, so basically it all started as affirmation cards. So as part of my own healing and as part of my own journey to just loving on myself, it included speaking goodness to myself. It included, you know, declaring the word out loud, finding scriptures that edify me, that remind me of who I am, that remind me of God's love for me, speaking them out loud when I felt insecure, speaking them out loud when I found that I was full of fear and my mind was racing. So when I learned the power of affirmations through it changing like my own life, my own mental state, sometimes instantly, but definitely over time, I also in the same kind of instance found that whilst at work, because I was in sales, as I mentioned earlier, and I used to call a lot of recruiters up, and I used to work for Total Jobs, so it's like a job board, and I used to call I used to have to be on long calls, and I would find that sometimes towards the end of the conversation, I'd just drift off. And this is the bit where like I could figure out what their needs are and actually make a big deal. And so I'd drift off and I wouldn't know how much of the conversation I missed. So I'd be like, I would get an idea that they want to close, like they want a deal, but I didn't quite know if I'd missed the main details basically. So I was getting deals, but the realization hit when someone was listening to one of my calls for training and was like, Penny, you could have gone in at so much higher of a deal. Like, well done for getting the deal. But didn't you hear when they said that they had boom, boom, boom needs? And I was like, oh, yeah. I just thought I'd upsell them another time. That was not what I thought. I just tapped out. Yeah. And so what had happened is I just drifted off because the conversation, whilst it was, you know, just me building rapport, sounds really dread, but building rapport became very understimulating for me. And I'd gone too far. I might have asked them about their holiday and they'd gone into so much detail.
And you was gone after that?
Yeah, I was like, so what I found ways to hold my attention was doodling and colouring and drawing. And because I was learning about affirmations, and I used to have, do I have any around? I used to have these little cards in my bag that had scriptures on. Or I had this devotional I was following, and if I found a devotional page that really spoke to me, I'd write it out myself and put it in my pencil case.
Oh, wow. And
so whenever I'd open my pencil case, I'd read it again because I remembered that had made me feel so good. But I forget the truth sometimes. I forget that. I forget how okay I am when I'm going through all of these internal struggles that don't make sense. I forget that not everything I think is real. I forget that I'm not fighting a physical battle. This is principalities and powers, and the mind, the battlefield's the mind. I forget that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I forget. I feel like I'm always going to have a weapon against me prosper. Do you know what I mean? So I knew by writing them down, I would remember. And it just so happened that I begun writing affirmations whilst on the phone at work. So I got to concentrate by doing something that I was enjoying. Colouring in and creating these cards wasn't distracting me from the call. It was actually making me be able to hear the person more because my brain wasn't searching for stimulation down in
Yeah. It was right there.
It was stimulated by the colours. So I was able to hear the conversation more. And then so I wrote a blog post about it and loads of people, I said, if anyone wants some, let me know. Well, that was a big thing to do because I didn't realize how many people would want them. But I started to send them out to people. Yeah. So just giving people a little card with a couple of affirmations cards in it. And then months later, someone said to me, they said, this blog post really helped me. Where can I buy the cards? And I was like, buy? I was like, okay, so people would buy these. So then I started to just make affirmation cards for people to buy, and then like framed. I used to just handmade on Etsy, and I started to like write Bible scriptures and frame them and stuff like that, and just go to the charity shop and get unique frames, one-offs, you know, and just like write something nice, put it in a frame and selling it to people online. So it started like that. And then, yeah, it was just all part of, I guess, me tapping back into my creative side, which has been so helpful. And also, yeah, learning the power of words. So it was, again, just what I was practicing ended up going into a business, turning into a business idea. And and then again with the balms that I was making, I was using a lot of essential oils for different things, to help with anxiety, to help with concentration. And then having them on your skin, I mean, it was all, it all just came hand in hand, really.
That is absolutely amazing. My last question that I really want to ask, which I ask to practically all my guests, is for where you're at in life right now, what advice would you give to yourself?
That's a very good question, I have to say. How long do I have to think about it? No, I'm joking. I would say, okay, so there's a couple of things that I've heard recently. I would say, hold your thoughts captive. So the thing that came into my mind was something that I read that said, keep the hearth of your thoughts pure. So I would advise myself right now to hold every thought captive before letting it turn into overthinking or assuming, because I still get tangled up in that. I still assume things mean different things, and it can form a whole mood. And we don't want that sometimes. So I would say work towards purifying your thoughts, and that's my own thoughts, and making sure that I'm thinking in just assuming the best, because it saves a lot. And also move forward courageously with a light heart. So again, be brave and bold, take chances, don't be scared of failure, and keep your heart light by keeping your thoughts light, because if my thoughts are light, my heart's light, my mood's light. If my thoughts are heavy, my mood's low. So I guess those two, and that's what I would try to practice.
Penny Jarrett. Also, guys, go follow at Penny Bell Creations, Bell with an E at the end.
Thank you.
Penny Jarrett, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. I just want to say as well, this is the first time I've ever spoken to anyone who just knows his stuff as much as you. So just big up you for your work ethic. Seriously, I've never experienced anything like it. The questions are so perfectly tailored. I said it before, it made me feel like you know me better than me. And I think that's just a massive sign of your hard work and commitment. And I think, you need to hear that as well, because it's rare.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really do. I just try and make sure that each guest, I know as much as I can about them, and not just about them. I don't want them to feel like they're just having, for those who have had interviews or conversations before, I don't want them to feel like just having another conversation talking about the same thing. I want to make sure that we tap into who they are as a person, because essentially conversation with Haych is about the person that I speak to. So thank you. I really do appreciate that. It's big. It's very impactful. That level of beforehand research, whatever it's called, pre-search, is that's a good one. Is very impactful. So I think you're proud of yourself for that. Thank you.
Defo.
Thank you. Penny Jarrett, appreciate your time. And for all you guys that are watching this conversation with Haych, we will have so much more content coming for you very, very soon.